Anyagolu. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced a new front to protect Christian communities in Nigeria and beyond. He cited persecution and violence against Christians in this country and framed the protection of Christian communities as an eighth front in the battle against radical Islamists. So how much does this move signal Israel's expanding role in global security, particularly in Africa, as we enter 2026? Meanwhile, 2025 was a bloody year in Gaza, where the war appears to have wound down, but only after Israel razed much of what was left of the Strip in a relentless assault, and Donald Trump pledged to bring peace to a world ablaze, putting himself center stage in that trouble spot. But his framework deal has left the core dispute unresolved, and a peace accord still seems elusive. Will 2026 be any better? Well, for more on all this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria, Michael Freeman. Good to see you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Happy New Year.
And to you as well.
Let's start with Nigeria and that announcement by Prime Minister Netanyahu of a new Israeli front to protect Christian communities in this country and other parts of Africa. How has it come to this?
Well, I think that what Prime Minister Netanyahu said, and it was very clear, was that he wants to make sure that all those persecuted around the world, and he highlighted Christians around the world, not only in Nigeria, that it was important to do what Israel can in order to work with our partners, to work with Nigeria, and that's very important. This is about working with Nigeria. This is not about working against Nigeria. It's working with them as a partner, as an ally, and seeing what we can do. And he emphasized the issue of intelligence sharing and working in that area. And certainly I think that's the area that we will be looking at, to work with the Nigerian government to see where we can work together to stop the attacks that are taking place against Christians, but also against Muslims and against all Nigerians. Our interest is to work with Nigeria to stop all the violence in this country.
I was going to ask you what specific actions Prime Minister Netanyahu proposes to take to protect Christians in Nigeria, but you've kind of answered that. But no unilateral action.
No, absolutely. Our aim is to work with the Nigerian government, and the Prime Minister highlighted issues of intelligence sharing and other areas, and I think that we will be led and guided by the Nigerian government as to where we can work and where we can partner, because this is very much about working with an ally, working with a partner, and doing things to tackle insecurity as a whole within the country.
And I mean, you're obviously, Israel is a staunch ally of the United States. I mean, if Mr. Trump was to decide to take some further action in Nigeria unilaterally, what would Israel's response be? I mean, I know it's a hypothetical situation.
Well, one, it's a hypothetical situation, and two, I think there's probably a better question to ask the American ambassador rather than the Israeli ambassador as to what the
well, the question is, what would Israel's response be?
Well, in a hypothetical, we'd have to see what the situation was. I couldn't tell you what our response is. What I can tell you is that we want to work with the Nigerian government to see what we can do to help and work with them to tackle insecurity across the country.
And how has the Nigerian government responded to Mr. Netanyahu's statement? I'm wondering if there's been any sort of behind-the-scenes diplomatic communication about this between you and the Tinubu administration?
Well, any communication behind the scenes will obviously remain behind the scenes. But as I said, Prime Minister Netanyahu has made our position clear, and so anything that we can do in those areas, and obviously when you're dealing with issues of intelligence and when you're issuing of information, it's not something that we're going to talk about publicly, because that would undermine the entire purpose of having a conversation about intelligence sharing.
But why would Mr. Netanyahu be talking about protecting Christians in Nigeria when peace remains elusive in his own backyard in Gaza? I mean, doesn't his statement seem contradictory given the ongoing Gaza conflict?
I don't think they're contradictory at all. What Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about was Christians across the world. It wasn't only he spoke about Christians in Nigeria, he spoke about Christians across the world. And he highlighted the fact that Israel is the only country in the Middle East where the Christian population is growing. It's the only country in the Middle East where the Christian population is thriving. It's the only country in the Middle East where Christians have complete freedom of worship and freedom to do what they want. And I think that that was the point that the Prime Minister Netanyahu was making. And that's the critical point here. here is that opportunity for Christians. You know, if you look at Israeli society, Christians are the most well-educated in Israel, they are the wealthiest, there are many, many things, but fundamentally, Christians have total freedom of religion. They can pray where they want. You know, we've just had New Year and Christmas, and you saw thousands of Christians in Jerusalem, walking through the Via della Rosa, going to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I was actually in Jerusalem on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day, and we saw Christmas trees and Christmas lights and Christians having a wonderful, wonderful time in Jerusalem, totally free to express their religion, to express their identity, and it was amazing to see. It was amazing as an observant Jew to be able to see this in my home city of Jerusalem.
So would it be fair to say that this announcement by Mr. Netanyahu talking about protecting Christians, not just in Nigeria but around the world, is part of a broader strategy? He talked about an eighth front in the battle against radical Islamists.
Yes, I think that that's true. If we look at what Israel's faced over the last number of years, we've faced 7 fronts of different radical Islamists attacking us, from Hamas to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to the various militias and terror groups in Iraq and in Syria, and we've seen also Iran attacking us directly. And so this is the challenge that's facing the whole world. And by the way, I think that radical Islamism is also a challenge to the Muslim population, and I don't think that we should highlight and focus purely on Christians. I don't need to explain to you that in Nigeria it's Muslims being killed, it's Christians being killed, it's been atheists being killed. It doesn't matter who you are. It's that insecurity that I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is highlighting and offering to work with the Nigerian authorities to help tackle, because this is affecting Christians, it's affecting Muslims, and it's affecting people of no religion.
But is it also about strategic diplomacy, an attempt to sort of strengthen ties with Christian communities and nations to counterbalance Muslim majority countries and Iran's influence, for instance, in addition to positioning Israel as a protector of Christians to bolster its image in the Christian world? Because, of course, that sort of action appeals to evangelical Christian supporters in the US and around the world, doesn't it?
Well, Israel protects Christian because it's what we believe in. Israel is a country that is founded on the principle of guarantee of equality of religion, the guarantee of freedom of religion. We see that the Muslims have freedom of religion, Christians have freedom of religion. The only time in Jerusalem's history when all the religions have had total freedom of religion is when Israel has been in control. And so it's not about doing something for political purposes or diplomatic purposes. This is a fundamental ideological belief that Israel holds, that we need to provide freedom of religion and protect all minorities. Doesn't matter if they are Christian, if they are Muslim, if they are Jew. The fundamental principle for us is to protect the freedom of religion and protect all of those people. So that's where this is coming from. That's where this is born from. And I would emphasize that Israel has got very strong relations with many Muslim countries around the world. We've seen that now we're celebrating 5 years of the Abraham Accords, where we signed agreements with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Morocco. Only today we announced a deepening of strategic ties with Morocco in the defense field and in other areas. So we've got very strong relations with Muslim majority countries, with Muslim countries and with Christian countries, because I think those countries recognize that we work to protect freedom of religion regardless of what the religion is.
But yet peace remains elusive in Gaza. In fact, Israel bombed Gaza today. A number of Palestinians killed, in spite of the fact that there is a pause in hostilities, or there's supposed to be there. Let's then turn to Gaza. We talked about the territory quite a bit in 2025, an attempt to end the conflict there. What's your expectation in 2026?
Well, firstly, we've seen, and I've been here many times, and we've spoken about the hostages on a number of occasions. There's still one Israeli hostage being held by Hamas, Ran Gvili. It is a body. He was murdered on the 7th of October, and Hamas are still holding his body. And we expect that as part of the agreement that they should return him immediately. Without him being returned, we can't really move on.
But surely, I'm sorry to interrupt you, you must know, I mean, you caused the destruction in Gaza. You must know that, look at all the rubble. I mean, we're watching scenes from Gaza on television. It can't be easy for the Hamas or whoever it is to find bodies in that rubble?
Well,
you won't allow heavy equipment into Gaza.
No,
how are they going to be able to dig all that up?
There's plenty of heavy equipment in Gaza. We've allowed heavy equipment into Gaza. And as you all know, they managed to return all of the other bodies that they knew exactly where they were. They played a game of, oh, we don't know where they are, they don't know where they are. And then when we said, well, if you don't know where they are, then maybe the ceasefire isn't working. And when President Trump made it clear that they needed to return the bodies, suddenly they found all the bodies. So we believe that they know where Ran Gvili is being held, and we believe that they need to return him immediately. And then the next stage of that is the disarmament of Hamas, because without the disarmament of Hamas, we can't be moving on. And that's the next part of the plan. The next part of the plan laid out by President Trump is the full and total disarmament of Hamas.
And that is absolutely crucial for Israel, isn't it?
Well, it's crucial, I think, for peace. It's not about whether it's crucial for Israel. This is crucial for peace. Hamas is a terror organization that not only carried out 7th of October, where they massacred thousands of Israelis and kidnapped Israelis. They've said over and over again that were up to them, they would carry out October the 7th over and over again. And the only way we stop that is to make sure that Hamas are disarmed. And Hamas are also terrorizing the Gazan population. We've seen that since the war has ended, that the ceasefire has come in, that we've seen that Hamas have turned their guns on the civilian population of Gaza. We've seen many civilians and many Gazans being killed and injured and maimed by these Hamas terrorists. And I think President Trump put it very, very succinctly. Either Hamas can do this the easy way, or they'll do it the hard way. But Hamas needs to be disarmed for any better future for the Palestinians in Gaza.
Well, Hamas, though, has made it clear that it will not unilaterally disarm, that it'll have to be part of a political process. And for Hamas, the Palestinians, the Arab states, and indeed for many Western countries, particularly some in Europe, it has to be a pathway to a Palestinian state. How do you see that panning out in 2026?
Well, Hamas are not interested in a Palestinian state. Hamas are interested in destroying the
but
Jewish
Israel
state.
isn't interested either.
No, Hamas are interested in destroying the state of Israel. That's what their charter is, that's what their goal is, that's what their aim is. And if anybody wants to see any peace in the future between Israelis and Palestinians, there is no place, no possibility for Hamas to remain in that. And therefore, if people are genuinely interested in seeing a peaceful resolution between Israel and the Palestinians, Hamas can't be part of that. Hamas can't be there. And therefore, they need to be disarmed, they need to be removed, and there needs to be an alternative governing structure in Gaza. And the Arab states support this. The Arab states also understand that Hamas can't be a part of any future, can't be any positive dynamic for the Palestinians. And so we need to work to disarm Hamas and to create a better, brighter future for the Palestinians.
Well, that's one sticking point. Of course, there is still the discussion around a stabilization force, discussions discussing which countries will be involved. There's talk about Azerbaijan, Indonesia, and I understand Turkey wants to be a part of it, but the Israelis don't want Turkey. I mean, is that a fact?
Well, we've seen that the Turkish leadership, Erdogan and others, have made outrageous statements about Israel, delegitimizing Israel as a country. They host Hamas leadership in Istanbul and in parts of Turkey. We've seen a number of terror attacks that have taken place inside Israel by Hamas originating from cells within Turkey. So putting Turkey in there at this stage is a bit like putting the fox in charge of the chicken coop. It's not a confidence builder. It's not a confidence builder, and it's not something that we think will lead to a positive dynamic and a better future for Israelis or Palestinians.
Well, let's say that Turkey is removed from that equation, and there is some stabilization force that goes in. Will the Israelis allow it to be powerful enough and enabled enough to push Israel out of the rest of the Gaza Strip? It still controls, which is around, I think, 53%?
Well, there's a very clear pathway which has been laid out by President Trump's plan, which Israel has accepted. And as we go through the stages, those stages involve Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. And our intention and our commitment made by Prime Minister Netanyahu and by the Israeli government is to follow that plan all the way through. And to follow it all the way through means obviously withdrawing on the basis that the other steps before that have also been followed, including the full disarmament of Hamas, a different force in there, guarantees for Israel's security, and all of those things need to be in place. But Israel, we have no territorial desire over the Gaza Strip. We left in 2005.
Well, you have territorial desires over the West Bank. I mean, you're
we
expanding
the conversation at the moment is obviously we're talking about Gaza.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, because you do have territorial ambitions on the Palestinian territory.
Well, your question was about Gaza
Right.
and about whether or not Israel is going to withdraw. We have no desire to be there. We withdrew fully once in 2005, and we certainly intend to leave there in the future. We don't want to be there. It's not a territory that we want to be. We have no desire to be there. And so as long as all of the stages are followed of President Trump's plan, then we will withdraw from the Gaza Strip as well.
Well, there's been talk of US boots on the ground in Gaza in 2026. Do you see that happening? The Americans going that far to assert their dominance in imposing that peace deal to full effect?
Well, I don't know who's going to have boots on the ground and who's not going to have boots on the ground. I know that we're committed to the Trump's peace plan, that we are committed to having a stabilization force. Who will be part of that stabilization force, who won't be part of that? Those are conversations that are ongoing and being discussed on a regular basis. And obviously to know exactly which countries will be a conversation to have with all of those countries.
So moving forward, there is still a great risk, isn't there, that it could all just fall apart in 2026. What do you foresee?
Well, I hope that it won't fall apart. I hope that this is a ceasefire. I hope that we will see the return of Rungvili's body. I hope that we will see the disarmament of Hamas. I hope that we will see a stabilization force there. I hope that we will see a new governing body that will bring a better future for the Palestinians. I hope that we will see the possibility of Israel withdrawing further, and that for all of the Israeli communities that are around Gaza, my father-in-law lives very close to the Gaza border, that he should have a more peaceful life, that he should be able to live like all of those people there, and that we also see a better future for the Palestinians. This needs to be a better future for everybody, because if it's not a better future for everybody, then there's no real hope of it lasting and being a better future.
Well, that's a good note to end on, and a hopeful one. So we thank you for coming in. Michael Freeman is the Israeli ambassador to Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed, and good to see you again. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.